Today we're going to do the last section of the IGCSE ESL Listening Paper. This is either the 0510 or 0511 paper. I have already made videos on all the other sections, exercise 1, exercise 2, exercise 3, and exercise 4, so do make sure that you go and watch them. Welcome to English Step by Step. My name is Miss Wee. I make English first and second language videos for Cambridge and now for Edexcel as well. As usual, we start with the tips. The first one is to read all answer choices and to underline the keywords, and then use predictive thinking skills and try to predict what synonyms or what paraphrases that they may use. Look out for traps or distractors and also negative wording. The most important part is to match the keywords or the synonyms or the paraphrases, which I will show you later. We will be attempting this paper, which is the May-June 2024 paper 2-2. Here are the questions from question 33 to 40. So the first step is to read the questions and to underline the keywords. If you need some time to do that first, please pause the video to do so. But I'm going to go ahead to the next page now where I have done it for you. So here we are. What made Joanna want to make sculptures? A visit to the art gallery, seeing a TV program, creating one at school. So I've highlighted the keywords in order to help me focus. Joanna says that her early sculptures seem embarrassing to her now, were always on a similar theme, took a long time to create. So try to come up with synonyms for these or paraphrases or other ways of expressing these ideas in your head. If you want to write them down for extra practice, you can do so. Otherwise, just do them in your head. Joanna says that her teachers at university encouraged her to avoid creating highly abstract sculpture, focus on painting rather than sculpture, experiment more with her sculpture. Again, I've highlighted just the important words so that it helps me to focus. Question 36. How did Joanna feel just before her first exhibition? Anxious that some of her work wouldn't be ready? Concerned that visitors wouldn't understand her work? Worried that art critics wouldn't like her work? Question 37. Joanna says that she usually gets her inspiration for a new sculpture by spending time in nature, putting thoughts down in writing, seeing other people's work. Question 38. Joanna chooses to create a lot of sculptures containing hands because they can be shown in so many different positions. She is especially skilled at sculpting them. They are a universal form of communication. So think about other ways of saying communication. Why does Joanna particularly like creating sculptures made from wood? It has a beautiful appearance. So what are the synonyms for beautiful? It feels good to touch. It is easy to work with. What advice does Joanna give to anyone who wants to start creating sculptures? Learn a wide variety of techniques. Try to develop an original style. What's another way of saying original? Use your emotions to inspire you. What's a synonym for emotions? That's called predictive thinking. Now I will play the track and we will start with question 33.
You will hear an interview with a woman called Joanna Walsh, who creates sculptures. For each question, choose the correct answer, A, B, or C, and put a tick in the appropriate box.
With us today is Joanna Walsh. Joanna, you're a sculptor, someone who creates sculptures. What first interested you in this?
I'm someone who prefers doing to looking, so while school trips to exhibitions were enjoyable enough, they hardly made me want to have a go myself. Actually producing a sculpture in art classes, though, well, that was a different story. And from the very first time I tried, I knew it was my thing. Funnily enough, I've recently watched a documentary about a famous sculptor who had a pretty similar experience.
So she says producing a sculpture in art classes, which means in school. That's not necessarily a synonym, but it has the same meaning. Well, that was a different story. And from the very first time I tried, I knew it was my thing. It was my thing means that it made her want to make sculptures. Sculptures was her thing. Now, watch out for traps such as this one. She mentioned that while school trips to exhibitions were enjoyable enough, they hardly made me want to have a go myself. So they didn't make her want to make sculptures. Hardly is a negative wording, which I mentioned to you in tip number 4. She also mentioned that I've recently watched a documentary, so that's a TV program, about a famous sculptor who had a pretty similar experience. Now, this is a distractor. She didn't say that this documentary made her want to make sculptures. So don't choose B as the answer. So the answer is C. Now let's continue.
So tell us about the first few sculptures you made.
Well, I'm not ashamed to admit that they were basically used food containers stuck together and painted. I was very much into dinosaurs at the time, so you can guess what I chose to make. I tried to make them as realistic as possible, and despite the materials I had to work with and the limited time available, I didn't do too bad a job.
So she says, I'm not ashamed. So ashamed is similar meaning to embarrassing, but because of the negative wording here, this is definitely not the answer. Now she says, I was very much into dinosaurs. So her theme was dinosaurs at the time. So you can guess what I chose to make. So she made dinosaurs, and that was her theme. She mentioned about having limited time. So this cannot be the answer because limited time and long time are opposites. So the answer is B, and let's go on to question 35.
You studied art at university, I believe.
Yes, and specialised in sculpture from the start. My lecturers generally wanted students to develop skills in a range of art forms, primarily painting, but could see I was only interested in sculpture, so let me get on with it. In fact, they pushed me to try out as many different styles as possible, including pieces that make it hard to recognise what the sculptor's trying to show.
She says that her lecturers pushed her to try as many different styles as possible, including pieces that make it hard to recognize. These are abstract sculptures. So including, it's the opposite of avoiding. She says that her lecturers could see that she was only interested in sculpture, so they let her get on with it. So they let her get on with sculpture. They didn't insist that she focus on painting, so B is not the answer. They pushed me to try out as many different styles as possible. So try out different styles, that is to experiment. So the answer is C. Let's move on to question 36.
You had your first exhibition not long after graduating. How was that?
It went well, but I was very nervous beforehand. I was too busy to even consider what the reviews for it would be like. A couple of my pieces were only half done, just a week before the show opened, so I was occupied 24 hours a day trying to finish them. I managed, and it was well received by the public, although I heard a few people saying they weren't sure what the sculptures were.
So the question is, how did Joanna feel just before her first exhibition? She said, I was very nervous beforehand. A couple of my pieces were only half done just a week before the show opened. So I was occupied 24 hours a day trying to finish them. So this matches with this one, which is anxious that some of her work wouldn't be ready. Now, she also said, I heard a few people saying they weren't sure what the sculptures were. Now, this is not before her first exhibition. This was after the exhibition. She heard this after the exhibition, so B is not the answer. That is a trap or a distractor. She said, I was too busy to even consider what the reviews for it would be like. So she wasn't worried at all because she was too busy. So she wasn't worried about what the critics would say. Critics would be another way of saying reviews. So the answer is A.
How do you get ideas for your sculptures?
First, I have to know what story I want the sculpture to tell. Once I have an initial idea, which might come from sources as diverse as an animal I've seen in a documentary or a conversation I've had with another artist, I start getting some phrases down on paper. The sculpture never begins with a visual image or clear picture of the finished artwork, but with words.
So she mentioned about animals she has seen in a documentary that is not spending time in nature, that is just watching it on a screen. She mentioned about getting some phrases down on paper, so that means she's writing things down. She also mentioned about conversations she's had with other artists. Conversation is not the same as seeing. This is hearing, this is seeing. So I wouldn't choose C. This is a trap. And so is this. A is also a trap. So the answer is B.
Many of your sculptures have hands in them. Why is that?
They're incredibly tricky to create, largely because of their extraordinary flexibility and the numerous ways in which we can move them, so they really test my skills to the limit. But hands can say so much without the need for words, whether you know a particular language or not. This makes them the perfect means of expressing a message that anyone can understand.
So she says it's incredibly tricky to create. There are numerous ways in which we can move them. This means that they can be in different positions, but this is not the reason for her to create sculptures containing hands. In fact, she says it's tricky, which is a negative word. It's difficult. She says that they really test her skills to the limit. She never said that she is especially skilled at sculpting them. They test her skills, which is different. And then she says that hands can say so much without the need for words. So that's a universal form of communication. So the answer is C.
Is there a material you particularly like to work with?
Wood, although I find it far from the easiest material to get into the exact shape I'm looking for. I'm of the view that sculpture isn't just about how pleasing it is to look at. We should use other senses to enjoy it too. The gentle warmth you get when you put your hand on a wooden sculpture is exactly what I want from my work.
So she says it isn't just about how pleasing it is to look at. So pleasing to look at means beautiful, but she has negative wording here, so A is not the answer. She says the gentle warmth you get when you put your hand on a wooden sculpture is exactly what I want for my work. So the gentle warmth, that means it's good to touch. So what I want from my work implies that she particularly likes that. And she says that it's far from the easiest material to get into the exact shape. So it's the opposite of C, so I wouldn't choose C. So the answer is B. Let's do the last one.
Any suggestions for people who'd like to try making sculptures?
An error many people make is to use feelings as a starting point, then attempt to express them in visual form. That's not going to work until you've developed a range of methods for controlling the shape of all the different materials you're likely to want to work with. Your unique style will emerge naturally once you've gained the practical skills needed.
Thanks, Joanna.
She says to develop a range of methods for controlling the shape of all the different materials you're likely to want to work with. So a range of methods means a variety of techniques. Let's look at B and C as well. Your unique style will emerge naturally once you've gained the practical skills needed. Here it says to try to develop. Here it says it will emerge naturally. So it's not the same. Although original style means unique style, B is actually a distractor or a trap. An error many people make is to use feelings as the starting point. So it says here, use your emotions to inspire you. Emotions and feelings are synonyms, but there is a negative wording here, an error many people make. So C is not the answer, and the answer is A. I hope that you found this helpful. Remember the 4 tips that I've given you to read all answer choices, underline the keywords, do predictive thinking, expect all 3 options to be mentioned and 2 of them to be traps, and make sure you learn to match synonyms or paraphrases as well. If you found this helpful, please do like, share, and subscribe. And also check out my other videos. If you need tutoring, you can contact me at either of these email addresses. There's currently a waiting list, so make sure that you don't contact me at the last minute just before your exam. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next video.